Even with us, we don't make tools anymore. So our hands and all are going to constantly change. We are not eating our diet is not the same. We're eating cooked food, softer food. So our jaws are going to undergo changes. So physically also we are going to undergo change. So of course, change, evolution is ongoing.
At this point I have to ask you about the Aryan invasion theory, right?
One thing we all should know that it's no longer exist. So why are you getting angry?
As in, it's been disproved.
It's been disproved long back. Aryan invasion, because there's no archaeological proof for invasion.
God. So, okay, this is the final say by an archaeologist.
Yeah, there's no proof of invasion.
In the age where the internet teaches you more about history than your own history textbooks, it's the podcasts, according to me, that are leading the way. And specifically in the world of history, it's the archaeologists. In the same way that scientists approach science, what I mean by that is they go about an evidence-based approach. Similarly, archaeologists approach history from an evidence-based approach. They go into their digging sites, their archaeological sites, from a very open perspective. They open to any aspect of history as long as there's proof behind it. This one's a history-specific episode. Everything from the Indus Valley civilization to the Aryan invasion theory to ancient Vedic culture. We've even spoken about the Mahabharata, the Itihas, or the real history of India. This one's a packed episode. I recommend that you watch it till the end, especially if you enjoy history. And remember, for more episodes just like this, make sure you follow TRS on Spotify. We're a Spotify exclusive. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. This is Disha Ahluwalia on The Ranveer Show. It's an archaeology special. Disha Ahluwalia, welcome to The Ranveer Show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here.
Another archaeologist on the show. Y'all are the flavor of the season for...
I think, we are slowly becoming,
Popular.
much talked.
Yeah?
People, yeah.
With
Social
YouTube,
media.
we have to always keep a track of what the janta wants, like what the audiences want. And right now, everyone wants archaeologists.
Yeah.
And it's primarily because people have a love-hate relationship with history in our country. And the hate usually begins in school because they think that the history books are pretty boring. And a lot of people believe that we're taught wrong history or we're taught unimportant history. I don't know how you feel about that. But most people are trying to learn history now through YouTube.
Yeah.
So how do you feel?
Yeah, it's very important. Like, somebody messaged me a few days ago and they were like, that like somebody who was in 40s, 50s, and she was like that in our age, we didn't have any information at hand.
Yeah.
But today there is so much of information and it's really good to put good content and good information, correct information out there. So I'm really happy that people are now interested in archaeology, which was not a much talked about, subject or profession. And it's interesting to initiate conversations. So that is really good. We can converse with people now with much ease.
Do you get asked about ancient aliens everywhere you go?
I do. Especially after the latest, Netflix documentary also. A lot of people have this conflicting views. But that's okay. Like, people ask questions and it's good that we tell them what is right and what is wrong. That is also needed. So people ask about ancient aliens, they ask about dinosaurs. We don't dig dinosaurs. We dig human beings and human-related things. So yeah, people do ask such questions.
Are you talking about that Graham Hancock documentary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Graham Hancock as an archaeologist?
He's not an archaeologist in a way that he's not trained in archaeology. He has interest and passion towards this subject, but he carries a very non-archaeologist perspective also. And by non-archaeologist perspective, I mean, as an archaeologist, we know that our facts speak the truth.
I'll have to give some context to the listeners.
Yeah.
So Graham Hancock is a journalist.
Who has passion for archaeology.
Yeah. He's been on the Joe Rogan Experience a lot.
Yes.
And he's constantly about these ideas related to lost history in terms of he highlights multiple different historical events, one of which being the Younger Dryas period where meteors hit the earth and apparently older civilizations were lost and wiped out, and a very tiny amount of human beings were left after that. That's the theory. I'm not pitching it. I'm just relaying it.
I know.
I get scared talking to archaeologists. Okay, no, I'm kidding.
I know that's what he is trying to suggest. And with the latest documentary also, he is suggesting a very alternative theory. See, I am all for alternative theory, right? Because in archaeology also, we know that a lot of things are not conclusive. They are tentative because till we find proper, solid evidence, we can't call, something with conclusive, it's not conclusive for us. So I understand that people will have their alternative theory, but this theory just goes beyond geological time scale and also evolutionary time scale. I mean, unfortunately, I did try to watch the Netflix documentary, but I could not. Within 5 minutes, I think I just put it off. I just could not, because what it's promote is pseudo archaeology, and it's a very important thing. He's actually done us a favor, because now archaeologist community have started talking about the pseudo archaeologism, which is ongoing on internet. See, there's pros and cons. So when with YouTube and other mediums we have good content, we also have very bad content.
What makes it pseudo archaeology?
Pseudo archaeology is somebody who is an archaeologist who pretends to be, with just the thought of finding something which is lost, but not following the practice, the field practice of an archaeologist. And I can't put these things in word because these are very, which are part of training. Like it's a process when we are uncovering things. I can't put in writing. It's something which is very intangible, which is very emotional also for a lot of us. We work with certain objectives and research questions in mind, and we have a lot of things that goes on while we just excavating one trench or one site.
Can you give an example? So
like for instance, like recently when I was excavating Rakhigari last year, I always make a point that I don't go with a set narrative. Like I go with the archaeological background of the site, when it was discovered, whether it was excavated before or not. But I will never go with a set narrative. There has been a lot of work that has come out of the blue. Great work done by archaeologists like A. Ghosh, H.D. Sankalia, V.N. Mishra, even Professor B.B. Lal, R.S. Bisht, who have just, they have gone with just the perspective of an archaeologist, who've not gone to a site saying that we're going to excavate this and this is what I want to find. No, they have found a site. They know the principles and methods of working, of archaeological work and investigation. They have gone with that, and they have bring out such important information that has now the foundation for us, the younger archaeologists, to work on. For example, I just give an example of Dholavira. When J.P. Joshi, an archaeologist, he first discovered Dholavira in Gujarat, which is now a World Heritage Site. But he saw the mound, and he saw stone structures on top, some remains being exposed and all, and he thought that it's basically a medieval fort. Okay, and he did not excavate that. Instead, he went and excavated Surkotada, which is in Kutch itself in Gujarat. It was then R.S. Bisht, Dr. R.S. Bisht, Padma Shri awardee. When he got charged, he was in ASI and he got charge of that region. He went to Dholavira again and he explored the region with his own perspective, with his own intelligence and archaeological practice that he has, training that he has obtained over the years. And he excavated the site, okay? And that's one of the most important archaeological Harappan site, which has given us rainwater harvesting evidences, which has given us, that there were reservoirs. How people in Kutch, which is a barren sort of arid land, people survived. They are reservoirs, rock-cut reservoirs, cut around the settlement so that they know when there is surplus of water, the rainwater, they will store it and with the rainwater harvesting and the tank system and interconnecting channels and big drainages, they will recycle the water also and use it because there is water scarcity. So if he had gone with the narrative or with the thought, or he had gone with what Dr. JP Joshi thought earlier, he would have not got excavated Dholavira.
Okay. Do you think that India started getting civilized with the Indus Valley civilization? And the second question is it only as old as 3000 BC? Or do you think it was old? Like, what does the evidence say about that?
Yeah. So the word civilization, what does it mean? First of all, archaeologically, okay? There are two terms: civilization and culture, right? Both terms we archaeologists use quite often in our literature, in our work. Now, civilization is a concept where you find things that make people, or suggest that the lifestyle of people was sort of organized or uniform over a large area. So over a large area, if there is some sort of uniformity, organization skills, like organization in terms of
administration, governance.
yeah, and also drainage, sanitation, town planning, all of that, certain parameters, if it sort of has, then it is a civilization. But within civilization there are cultures. Now, what are cultures in archaeology? We keep using this term culture quite often, all the time. I hear people talk about culture, but archaeologically, what do we mean about culture? For us, in simple terms, culture is nothing but learnt behavior, something that we learn, and over the period of time, given the landscape, the geomorphology, ecology, resources, etc., everything, the behavior that we learn and the tradition we develop over the period of time, that is culture. And for us, we focus on material culture, right? So within a civilization, there is culture also. So of course, the civilization, it is a very, like old world. If I look at the old world, the ancient world, there are contemporary civilizations like Mesopotamia, Egypt civilization, Harappan civilization, or Indus Valley civilization is contemporary to them. Okay.
It happened at the same time.
It happened at the same time, right? But now looking at the history of the Indian subcontinent, because India is today a political boundary that, we know, but back then that boundary didn't exist.
The Akhand Bharat area.
The subcontinent. So if you look at the subcontinent, the history, it goes very well into the prehistory. So we have stone tools that are dated to 1.5 million years. These are prehistoric stone tools. 1.5 million years, okay? And you see Homo sapiens evolving and migrating out of Africa, coming here.
Which is roughly like when?
50,000 years ago.
70,000
Because
years
1.5 million years stone tool is attested to Homo erectus, our predecessor species.
Okay.
Not us. Our species evolved. This is one of the theories. Our species evolved in Africa, migrated to India about 70 to 50,000 years ago.
What's the story of India? Like, if you can just draw out a picture of the subcontinent, you said 1.5 million years ago, we believe that there were
stone tools.
There were stone tools.
Yeah.
Which might mean that Homo erectus existed in India.
They're dated.
Okay.
Not might.
No, but
it's scientifically dated.
Okay. It might mean Homo erectus or maybe
right now we know because of the stone tool technology and doing a typological analysis. But yes, there's always another possibility. But that is it correlates with the time period of Homo erectus, 1.5 million, and then we have Homo sapiens, that is our species coming in the scene.
I just want to add one small cool historical fact I learned recently.
Yeah.
So I think this was on Joe Rogan, where they showed orangutans using stone tools.
Stone tool.
So Joe Rogan said that maybe they've reached their point in the evolution where they've now discovered how to use tools.
Yeah.
And they'll eventually evolve into some sort of
you never
more
know.
Evolved being.
Yeah, because evolution is ongoing. Yeah,
even with those animals.
Even with us.
Even with us.
We don't make tools anymore. So our hands and all are going to constantly change. We are not eating our diet is not the same. We're eating cooked food, softer food. So our jaws are going to undergo changes. So physically also we are going to undergo change. So of course, change, evolution is ongoing process.
All men are going to become bald eventually. Because balding is like the dominant gene.
We never know what our next species is going to be, but we might not able to see it or imagine it as of now. But painting the picture of India.
Yeah.
So with the prehistoric evolution, we have Homo sapiens, that is our species, coming on board, and then their culture sort of evolves. The stone tool technology that sort of is evolved, and then the progression happens, and then Holocene begins, and Holocene is a time when the ice starts to melt. So
Which is
that's the end
roughly
of
when?
Ice Age, 10,000 BCE. Okay. So that's when the ice starts to melt. The ice age has ended. You have rivers, lakes being formed.
Wha-
Fish
what-
becomes part of the diet.
Was there a lot of ice in India? Like even say in Mumbai?
Not a lot of it. But of course, the ice age, the cold weather did affect the environmental thing.
So it could have been snowing in Mumbai.
Not in
time.
Mumbai, but per se, but see, about 30, 40, 1,000 years ago, if I look at it, the rivers that we see today, which basically have helped the cultures to evolve, were not existing. They started to exist only when the ice in the north starts to melt. The glacier starts to melt because the temperatures become a little warmer.
Wow.
So that has happened.
So this whole thing about Saraswati going underground and all, was there like a different...
That is much later.
So there was a whole different river system only back then.
Saraswati was, of course, a very elaborate river system. We know that now. We have satellite imagery, and we know because of the tectonic shift, the Markan Divide in the Himalayas, that the glacier that would feed the river was blocked. So that's the reason why the river became more of a seasonal river. That is, whenever there is a high rainfall, there would be water, and that is the reason why slowly, steadily, in the southern part of the Saraswati river system, that is the Ghaggar Hakra area, which is the Rajasthan, the northwest Rajasthan, towards Sindh, that part starts to disappear. And the reason is because, see, if there is no water running in the rivers are usually deep, and water carries a lot of silt. So if there is no water running, like with the force, and if there is only rainwater, it will only come with the force to a certain point, downstream to a certain point. It will not go on, all across its...
it won't go into the ocean.
It won't go into the ocean. You need supporting tributaries to help the water in the channel.
Okay.
So what happens is due to aridity also about in 2000 BCE, the part of Ghaggar Hakra started to become very silty because of the sand dunes also.
Where is this?
This is north of Bikaner.
Okay.
If you look at the map of India and if you zoom in to Sri Ganganagar district, you will see a green sort of patch which resembles a river course going towards Sindh, the Pakistan border, and suddenly disappears. So that is the last part of the Saraswati system, which we call it the Ghaggar Hakra. Okay, so when the siltation is happening, of course, the river is no longer very deep. It's become shallow. So even if there is a rainfall, every 10, 20 years, massive flooding is happening, the water will not retain. It will flood over, in the neighboring area. So that is one of the reasons why it happened. And also because Thar it's in the desert area, the sand dune starts to move. So because of the sand dunes, the river bed sort of gets silted and becomes more and more shallow with the period of time. So these are the reasons why Saraswati disappeared. And we know that about 2000 BCE, which is about 4,000 years ago, this phenomenon started to happen. We have evidence for it.
It started going underground.
It started disappearing.
Okay.
It starts to disappear. because there was no supply, water supply.
there could have been other river systems like Saraswati also.
The Satluj was there, Yamuna was there, Ganga was in existence. So also because of the tectonic movement, the Yamuna shifted more closer to Ganga
Okay.
around the same period of time. So if you see the changes that happened with Yamuna, slowly it has started going towards the Ganga, near Ganga.
Okay.
Now if you look at the map, there is Ganga, then Yamuna, and there's not much gap between them.
So-
Initially, the gap was much more wide.
So earthquakes happen all the time. There are tectonic
Tectonic
plates,
shifts, yeah.
tectonic shifts that happen all the time. So basically, some earthquake has happened in the Himalayas somewhere, and because of that, a river gets entirely dried out or reduces over time,
Yeah.
and then civilizations have to shift inward, outward. They have to
Not-
move there.
Yeah, so not only the whole civilization was not affected by that.
Okay.
Only the Harappan sites on the Ghaggar Hakra.
Okay. Usually, cities and towns come up near river systems because it's conducive to human life.
Because if you see Indus and on the Yamuna and even the Gujarat, the Harappan sites thrived even after that. They started to disintegrate, after 1900 till 1500 BCE. Whereas on Ghaggar Hakra, the work that we have done personally, because that's my part of my doctoral research, we know that about 2000 you start seeing the sites, Harappan sites are being deserted.
Okay. I'm gonna draw out this picture again.
Yeah.
1.5 million years ago, we find stone tools in India. In about between 50,000 BC and 70,000 BC, in that period,
1,000 years ago. Yeah.
yeah.
The Homo sapiens.
Homo sapiens are migrating into India. You'll have to paint the picture from 50,000 BC onwards.
Yeah.
This is an archaeologist's perspective with evidence to back
Yeah.
the story.
So after that, as I said, about 10,000 BCE, the Holocene set in, and then the rivers were formed, and then fish become part of the diet. It led to rise of agriculture. So the people who were hunter-gatherers, they decided to, opt for sedentary lifestyle. So agriculture started. The earliest evidence of agriculture comes from Mehergarh, which is now in Pakistan, but it's part of the Indian subcontinent. The evidence is that about 7,500 BCE or 7,000 BCE, the agriculture practices started
As in,
at the site.
this evidence is older than any evidence we found in UP or Bihar or Northeast India.
See, in UP also there is a site called Auradeva where there is evidence of about 5,000 BCE the agriculture, but the Mehergarh is the oldest and most stratified archaeological. It's like you have index sites which has, you can see the evolution, from early farming all the way to Harappan.
And this early farming is termed as early farming because the tools were more primitive.
Also because they started now farming, they started including cereal and other grains into the diet besides hunting.
Okay.
And the game, besides the animals. They've
Okay.
started including cereals and the things that they will produce,
Okay.
they cultivate. So all that was included. So of course, in the world view, the earliest evidence of agriculture comes from Central Asia, Turkey. It comes from there. There is no other site so far which precedes Turkey's evidence, which is very early, about 9,000 BCE. No other site precedes. So there is also a theory suggests that the farming practices, the practice migrated from, along with people perhaps, from that area to different parts of Europe and also the subcontinent. And 7,000 500 BCE is when Mehergarh, the evidence comes. But I also want to say this here that these are the evidence that we have right now. Tomorrow, if we excavate a site which gives us much early evidence, it's much more possible. So this is what I'm talking is what we know as of now.
Yeah.
Okay? You also need to understand that with archaeology, there's also a lot of possibilities which are still buried. We don't know yet. So the agriculture, early farming life sort of starts, and with this sedentarism, you have small settlements coming up.
Again, one last thing I want to mention here, because I know what a lot of audience members are thinking. We've even had Abhijit Chavda on the show, and he had put out a theory saying that during the Ice Age, because we're a subtropical region, a lot of human beings settled in India because it was more conducive to human life, and then possibly migrated outwards from India. Okay.
See, that is of course there, because you see where India is placed. Very strategically, it is placed. It connects the east also, and it connects the west. It's a connecting landscape,
Hmm.
right? If you look at the migratory track, and also you have to cross sort of Southeast Asia, South Asia to go towards connecting the Australian landscape continent also. So you just see India is placed very strategically, and that's the reason why we are we thrived as traders.
Hmm.
We still did. Even Indian Ocean trade thrived, right? Because of the placing of the subcontinent. And from Africa, if you look at the map, you have Central Asia, then coming to India, and then probably coming to the Southeast. So that is already been established on the basis of dates also.
I think a lot of listeners who don't have an archaeologist perspective have a very romantic outlook on
Yeah.
India, thinking that no, we were the oldest civilization.
You're one of the oldest civilization, no doubt. No doubt.
I think there's also a lot of I was going to say khunnas. There's a lot of like anger towards Britishers for writing our textbooks in a certain way. So right now, that's where the internet is. Like they're pissed off that things like the Aryan invasion theory, things like the Indus Valley civilization are that out there. They're saying that history has started from there, but they fail to listen to the archaeologist's perspective, where you guys back it by evidence. So
Mm.
as I said with Anika Man, I feel like you guys have the biggest right in terms of you'll have the right to speak the truth, because this is your job. Like
Yeah.
y'all are trying to go about history from a place of science as well, not just theory and not just romance.
See, yeah, it's true. There is a lot of romanticism that happens, but that we can't do that in the field when we are excavating,
Yeah.
Artifacts and excavating features. We can't romanticize history. Then we can do it on the table.
Like it feels very nice to hear those things.
Yeah,
Because even
yeah.
you're Indian, you love your country. Like it's not that you don't want to believe that we were the greatest
we are
civilization.
one of the oldest, and we are
Okay.
one of the biggest.
Hmm.
Indus Valley civilization is the biggest civilization. You see the spread. They were geniuses.
Wait, I'll let you come back there after you explain what happened after Holocene. period.
Yeah. So after early farming,
I'll shut up now. I'll just stay quiet and let Disha
So,
continue.
after the early farming, we have cereals being introduced. The society then undergoes change. So when you are no longer predominantly focused on surviving on hunting, and now you can sit and you can produce, and a part of it, of course, hunting. So when I say early farming, I don't mean that the hunting has disappeared. So you have early farming along with the hunting community going parallel also. Okay, in fact, with Indus, you have Neolithic, which is, early farming. So although Indus is an urban center, but then you have farming communities also continuously growing. So there is no, there's no block which is on top of the other. There are different, the branches of tree that's sort of going around in the subcontinent. So you have different cultures. You have civilization, but you have the farming community. You have indigenous cultures also. You have contemporary cultures also. So with the early farming, the perspective changed. Now you can sit and you have to work in the field. You don't have to go into the wild and hunt and wonder if you won't find anything, what will you eat. Now you can produce. With that, there was, of course, the social structure must have also undergone change.
What was happening in South India at this point?
Southern India also we find evidence, but not that early so far.
Is there digging happening in Southern India now?
Yeah, digging is ongoing.
Okay.
So of course there is parallel evidence to Indus Valley also.
They found it.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
when I was growing up in school,
they never teach you all this. They
Yeah.
only teach you it's like, and I keep talking about this, and in my work also I'm trying to sort of promote this, that people think that there was Harappans and the entire canvas of the subcontinent was blank.
yeah, because this is literally what's taught in
But
history.
that's not true.
It precedes the Aryan versus Dravidian
Yeah.
theory,
This
which is used even today in Tamil Nadu as a
Mm.
divide and rule policy by political parties.
yeah, I'm aware of it.
they'll say that no, you guys are Dravidians and you guys are from the Aryan race. That's why one, you'll need to hate North India, and even amongst each other, there has to be rivalries. This a friend of mine, Madan Gauri, who's a Tamil YouTuber, told me. I didn't know that this Aryan versus Dravidian thing is still there today. But it comes from British times where they were trying to.
It is a very colonial approach.
Divide and rule. That's why they told us that okay, the Indus Valley civilization was populated.
They were Aryans.
Yeah.
And the downside to this is that in southern India, people have started to want ancestry, forced ancestry to the Harappans. Because they think that they want to prove desperately that Harappans migrated all the way to south. And that led to the culture there. And then they are the descendants, direct descendants to the Harappans. But it doesn't work like that. Because you see, when you're migrating, you are crossing a lot of huge chunk of a landscape, and you don't have trains and flights. Then you have to either cross by foot or by river, or you have to use a primitive mode of transportation to do so. And in that, you will be meeting indigenous culture changing also. Change happens. Our generation is a very good example of change. We are born somewhere, we might studied somewhere, working somewhere, we'll settle somewhere else, and our children will be born in a different place to what we were born, where we were born. So it's much evident that where I was born, my child will have a different cultural perspective to what I had. They might not carry on a lot of Punjabi perception of Punjabi-ness in them. They might have different thing, because that's what culture demands. So you change. We always change. So once you have a sedentary life, once you are farming, your socio-economic and also your it becomes a little more complex. You might we see a lot of small settlements coming up, and these small settlements sort of gave rise to the civilization or urban phase, or the urbanization of which the Harappans are very well known of. We see this in evidence that there's early Harappan which are farming, pre-Harappans also which are early farming, and then slowly towards mature Harappan they become these very complex, unified, very they master the craft of trading. The Harappans mastered the craft of trading
with Mesopotamia?
with the Western civilizations.
Okay.
Right? So we know that now that there is slowly evolution that has happened. And then because Bronze Age civilization across the globe sort of disintegrating, started to sort of there was a decline into the civilization.
You'll have to explain what Bronze Age civilization means.
Okay. So Bronze Age is when, there is stone tools. So archaeologically, our cultures are also termed after stone tools, right? And then metal comes in. So when the metal comes in, we start using that, defining that particular time period as per the metal. So Chalcolithic is the time period where copper is introduced. Okay. And then the bronze is where copper alloy is made, where tin is added to copper to create bronze. So Harappans mastered that metallurgy to add tin in the copper and create bronze artifacts. So therefore they are the Bronze Age civilization. And contemporary world, there were other Bronze Age civilization, of course, other old world civilizations.
I have to do this to you because again, it's a theme of the show. So without breaking your flow, I'd love to know from you what you feel about the Mahabharata, because you're writing a book on it. I'm not going to ask you whether you believe it happened or not. I'm going to ask you an archaeological perspective, but I'm also going to say that I've asked a lot of people on the show this, and a lot of people kind of single out roughly 3000 BCE as the time a lot of people choose to believe it happened. Now 3000 BCE, according to the timeline you've given, is roughly when the Bronze Age civilization.
Yes, the urban phase starts. The urban phase of Harappan civilization starts about 3000 to 2600 BCE.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a very important question, and I'm adding that in my book as well.
Okay.
So thank you for putting it out, because that's what people think. When suddenly somebody gives a date to the epic about 3000 BCE. Now, since I've discussed about archaeology very briefly with you, now you have got this question, right? That if 3000 BCE or 3rd millennium BCE is the urban phase of Harappan, how will now can I put Mahabharata into that context? right? So these are the questions which we archaeologists we were run from that perspective.
Do you all discuss Mahabharata and all that with each other?
Not openly. It's sort of an hush thing.
Why?
I don't know why. I mean, when I started working, in the field, my work basically revolves around painted greyware, which is linked to the Mahabharat's period in time and space. Not the epic, but the period of Mahabharat in time and space. That
Time,
particular.
space,
Matlab, there's an area of Mahabharat, no? The Kuru,
Okay.
Panchal area. So that particular pottery is very predominant in that particular area, and you find that with iron. Okay? So after Harappan, that culture emerges in the subcontinent. So the theory by Professor Lal was that the people who are using this pottery and using the iron are the ones this time period is what syncs with the epic narration of the Mahabharat in time, that is the period of PGW, and in space because of the spread. So he undertook an exploration on the basis of the description of the epic, the areas that are mentioned in the epic, especially the Kuru, the predominant the Hastinapur area, all the way till the Purana Kila and Tilipat, Panipat, Bagpat area. So Satluj and Yamuna, or that entire Yamuna Ganga Dwab he has explored on the basis of the rough outline that you get from the Mahabharata of the Kuru Panchal. His work is an ironclad theory that nobody is able to disprove even after 7 decades.
Okay.
Or work on it again. Nobody
Can you expand the theory?
Yeah, so what he has said, that as I've explained, that painted greyware and its spread and its time period. So he said that the sites like Hastinapur, because he excavated Hastinapur, sites like Hastinapur, he also excavated Purana Kila, he excavated many sites that find resonance to the epic Mahabharata, because the Mahabharata is an interesting epic. A lot of these cities and towns that are mentioned in the Mahabharata, they carry the same name even today. Like Hastinapur has a name, Dwarka is still called Dwarka, Mathura is still called Mathura, Kurukshetra is still called Kurukshetra. So he undertook explorations and excavations at these various archaeological sites, and he came to the conclusion that painted greyware, this particular grey pottery, which is basically starts the Iron Age in the subcontinent, was found on all these sites.
Okay.
At the lowermost strata.
They didn't find nuclear weapons. They didn't find Brahmastras.
Sadly, no.
Okay. I'd love to know what else was found in this time and space, because for every young Indian kid, you'd love to feel like bows and arrows were found in Kurukshetra, swords were found in Kurukshetra after the epic battle took place. So, I mean, it's a very raw question to an archaeologist. And I know that with history, we don't even know what we don't know, because so much gets lost. And all of history all over the world is fragmented. So stories stay because grandmoms love telling the grandchildren stories.
Yeah, that's how the beauty of Mahabharata is that.
I feel
it's like an inheritance.
I feel there must have definitely been some epic war.
Of course, a lot of work of fiction also. If you read any fiction book, even today, you pick up anything, that the author will always place something on something which happened, or will choose a time period, right? It happens. Even the fiction world, the writing works like that. You pick up a time period, you base your story in that set of era, and then you correct the facts of that particular era, and then you create the story. So for those who don't think, I'm talking about the both sides of the prism, those who don't think the epic is the true reality, they should also know that even the work of fiction is based on the reality.
They must. For them, I'll draw the picture that there could have been a civil war between a family.
Could be. Yes, exactly.
Where they control
Bharatvarsh. Exactly. We don't know because it's all intangible. On the other side of the prism, who takes Mahabharata as as the true identity, as an article of faith, as it's an article of their, they take it to its ancestry. Like, if anybody questions Mahabharata's existence, it's like questioning the ancestry. They should know also that when archaeologists dig, we dig people. We don't dig gods. We don't dig the divine beings. We don't dig the heroes. We dig people. So our job is not to validate the beliefs of the people or disapprove the belief of the people. That is not our job. No sane archaeologist will ever do that. Our job is basically to tell you what people were like, how they lived, even if it's the time period of the Mahabharata. You would want to know how the houses were like. If PGW is in time and space synced to the Mahabharata, you would also want to know, right? What were the eating habits? How did they live? Besides, beyond all of these, elaboration, exaggerations, and these, this beautiful embroidery that you had, this poetic narration, which is, it's just it's class apart, the epic. So you would also want to know. That's what we do. Our job is not to validate anyone's belief or anyone's thing
on either side.
But our job is true to the facts, and that's what Professor Lal also did. Of course, he got into a lot of controversy over the years because the tussle between the right and the left kept on going. But as an archaeologist, when I look at his work in 1945, 50s that he has done, I know that he based his things on facts. And if I read his work, old work, he says, if you think tomorrow that I am wrong and maybe not PGW but an early culture is linked to Mahabharata or a later culture is linked to Mahabharata.
What is PGW?
Painted grey ware, that Iron Age, 1100 BC is not the time of Mahabharata, whether it's early or later. You can do it, but you'll have to fulfill these parameters that I have fulfilled. Because what I have done is I have done a geographical exploration and I have tried to link the Mahabharata to the archaeology.
Okay.
So far no work has been done. Nobody even initiated a conversation to and fro. And his theory still stands. I'll tell you, this is what is part of my book, right? I was excavating Barnava, which was mentioned in the Mahabharata as Varnavat. Barnava was one of the sites explored by Professor Lal, who I was talking about, who was the one who came up with this theory. So
what was it in Mahabharata?
So there was this episode in the Mahabharata where the Pandavas with Kunti, they go to Varnavat to perform rituals.
Okay.
So it is on the bank of river Hindon. Between Yamuna and Ganga. So that area is a river called Hindon. It's on that bank. And there basically is a confluence of two rivers, one Krishni, Hindon, in that landscape. So they go there to Varnavat to perform rituals, and the Kauravas have sort of conspired to murder them. So they commissioned an architect to build a palace of Lakshagre. So they commissioned him to build that, so that when the Pandavas go, they can just burn it and they will die. So, but the Vidur, he basically goes and tell Yudhishthira about this particular plan, and he says that you should ask somebody to build a tunnel, dig up a tunnel, so that you escape, but you leave 5 people there, 6 people there. And then the Kauravas will start rejoicing that Pandavas are finally dead. But what happens is they go to Virat Nagara and they live in disguise for a year. So this whole the narrative is from the Mahabharata. So this particular site was said to be the spot for the Lakshagre, where the tunnel was built, but was dug. So, but when we were excavating, I remember when the news of our excavation reached the journalists and the people, you won't believe that very first day there were about hundreds and hundreds of journalists. We had to literally call security and we had to really be very careful because there were so many, because that particular thing stirred up emotion in people and people want to know what are we doing? And when I started excavating, there would be journalists coming every day, people in large number coming to the site, wanting to see what we are digging. They constantly expected us that we will find that that tunnel, that Lakshagriha tunnel, right? That's what they thought. Even the gurus, in the region, the religious figures, they would come and they would, say, ask me, what did you find? And they will not ask me, of course, because I'm a girl. They will ask other people what has been found, but then they will tell them, this is what we have found. Mitti, mud structures and pottery and all of that. They will not be interested in that. Because what they want to find is, all glorified details that are mentioned in the Mahabharata. But that's not what we find in archaeology.
At this point, I have to ask you about the Aryan invasion theory,
Yeah.
right? Which is a very controversial topic on the internet because people feel very strongly about it because there is a lot of colonial anger.
Yeah.
I feel most of India really hates the British.
Yeah, it's true because it's colonial. But one thing we all should know that it's no longer exist. So why are you getting angry?
As in, it's been disproved.
It's been disproved long back. Long back. Aryan invasion, because there's no archaeological proof for invasion.
God. So, okay, this is the final say by an archaeologist.
Yeah, there's no proof of invasion.
And on what basis were Britishers telling us?
See, what they said, I tell you. So, let's just go back a couple of decades, right? When people started digging up places and started finding evidence. So the people who actually initially initiated this were the British officers, right? Of course, later on, they trained Indian archaeologists, and I'm sitting because of that training that has happened back in 1940s, 30s, 20s. That has happened. But what they were trying to do is they were trying to fill in the gaps. What they thought that the written text is what, the date that is given as per the Sanskrit literature is where, and also Alexander's invasion is where the history of India begins. That was the initial perspective, right? That was before the excavation of Harappa. People thought that the country's the history starts with the invasion of Alexander, and then comes the Ashokan Empire.
But what did they think was before Alexander?
Nothing. We were all barbaric. So an invader has to come and have to teach us the way of life.
Okay.
Because that is what they were doing, no? They were trying to project that only. The British Empire or the colonial officers were trying to say that only, that they are civilized and we are barbarics, right?
Okay.
That is what Churchill has said, that Indians missed the bus of civilization, right? Is his famous quote that he has given very publicly. But what he didn't know, that we had the oldest civilization, which was uncovered by the very British officers themselves and the Indian archaeologists who were leading the excavations at Harappa and then at Mohenjo-daro. So before that, before the Harappa's excavation, which began on 5th of January 1921, that excavation changed the game, because now the antiquity or the chronology of Indian history was pushed back to 3rd millennium BCE. Was now pushed back from Alexander's invasion, supposed invasion. It went back to the earlier civilization, which now put us on the map with the civilizations of Egypt and Mesopotamia, right? So this happened about 100 years ago, in 1921. 1924, 24th September is when John Marshall publicly announces that India has found its missing civilization, which puts India at the map of the old world civilizations, right? And henceforth, we have excavated hundreds of sites, and we now know it's one of the biggest civilizations in the old world, right? So the perspective was how did it change, right? Where people first thought that the Indians, their history starts only with Alexander. Now suddenly, after Harappa's excavation, the history was pushed back to 3rd millennium BCE, right? Before that, they were hunter-gatherers. That was known. Hunter-gatherers were known. They were bothered about when the civilized history starts.
Yeah.
which is not hunter-gathering history, which is more into, big structures, this, that, and all of that thing. So now they know the civilized history starts about, 3rd millennium BCE. And then slowly, steadily, this excavation work started happening. More Harappan sites came into the picture, and the evidence came to the picture. But then what happened was, archaeologists found out that about 1500 BCE, this civilization dies down. Okay, so from 1500 to the next culture, which was a painted graveware culture, which was 1100 1000 BCE. Between this time period, 400 years, what happened? 500 years, 500 years, what happened? How come a civilization which was so skilled and so advanced and was so rich culturally, socially, and all of that dies down due to XYZ reasons, and the next culture is coming up at 1100 BCE? So to fill that gap comes in the picture of invasion, because the text says that the invasion, or Aryans were the ones who led the second urbanization, and they are the ones who immersed the culture. So there people started playing the gap in the archaeological data and started filling in that Harappans did not disappear due to environmental crisis or any other crisis, but an invasion happened that killed people, and then the invaders were the ones who came, settled, and they are responsible for this, the next urban, because that the second urbanization was much more advanced, which was this, rise of Magad and all these republics. So they're like, see, earlier they were just, town planners and all. These people were pushed down, or, invaders came, so they ran down to south, and then there was a blank. So the Aryans were the one responsible for the culture's emergence.
Basically saying North Indians are descendants of Europeans and South
Central
Indians
Asians.
are...
Yes, they are the Harappan descendants. So this is where the Aryan invasion theory came to play, because there was a gap in not history but archaeological culture.
So what happened? How did that gap get filled?
Gap got filled because we know that no Harappan sites were raided by invaders.
Because we've not found
there's
weapons.
No evidence. Yes, there's no weapons. There is no mark of any invasion.
And there are marks of invasions in archaeology.
Yeah, we can find.
Okay.
See, because when we are excavating, we're not idiots. People think that, like we can't understand something and it's not there. But archaeologists' job is to pick these small evidence and to test them. We can very well understand if there is an invasion happened or not.
Okay.
Right? We can very well understand if there was a war or not. We can very well understand that there was earthquakes that destroyed a city or a fire that destroyed a city. We work with such principles and methodologies backing us that we can very well identify these things.
Okay. So again, what's your conclusive thing about what happened in that 400-year period? People just migrated?
Slowly, when this theory came up, and then with archaeology developed, sites being excavated, the data started filling in. So eventually when the data was filled in, people realized that there is no invasion. It's just one theory that was put forth. And now if you test it, it does not stand a chance. So there was no Aryans who invaded the subcontinent. So therefore that theory got discontinued, this was disregarded long back. But what replaced that theory was a migration theory, the Aryan migration theory. So since there was no weapon, there was no other sign of war or any invasion, people who propounded the invasion theory initially changed their stance and said, look, okay, fine, there was no invasion, right? We understand. There is no weapon, there is nothing. But what is there? There is a new culture coming. So, invasion nahi, but migration happened. So, at a particular period, a migration has happened, and they are the ones who are responsible for the emergence of culture, which is the second urbanization and so forth, right? But my stance, personally, if I talk about my particular opinion, people are migrating all the time. Harappans migrated. They went all the way to Mesopotamia, Egypt, and settled their settlements also over there because they were trading. They migrated. People from other places must have migrated. Marital alliances, work-wise, etc. the migration is an ongoing process. We ourselves are the species of migration. Because our own species migrated out of Africa. So you cannot deny that there was no migration. What I don't like or approve of defining or putting in this time bracket. That in this particular time bracket, people have migrated, and because there was nobody on the landscape, they migrated and they changed the indigenous culture, and indigenous people adopted that particular culture and they let go of their own culture, and that adopted culture sort of led to the
Better civilization.
better
Because
civilization.
it's a way of saying white people were needed to make your civilization less barbaric and
Yeah,
more
and
advanced.
in this, you don't find any conclusive archaeological proof
Okay.
either, right? So for me, I at times feel it's a constructed identity. So the whole theory that the North Indian, especially, there's a Central Asian migration that happened, and they are, because Central Asians are the ones who are the ones who, the Rigvedic people, they migrated and they gave us the Rigveda. But then the question that I ask is, they gave us the Rigveda and they forgot Rigveda themselves, right?
There
And
must have been some
the
Rigvedic.
continuity there also.
Yeah.
There has to be, right? Because you don't forget the thing. These things, if we are still following a lot of Vedic traditions,
Mm.
if one has to go with this theory, if you adopted this,
Yeah.
still,
You know, the one thing I'm trying to actually learn more through the podcast is the parallels between Indian culture, ancient Indian culture, by which I mean Vedic culture, and ancient Zoroastrian culture, because there are some similarities and it's very interesting. It's like
Yeah.
basically in our stories, Asuras are the villains and Devas are the heroes. And in their stories, Ahuras are the heroes and Daivya is the villain.
yeah,
What does that mean?
yeah.
So it could have just been two warring tribes which
Yeah.
painted the other tribe as the villain.
See, you have to also understand that the world was not living in isolation like the way we think.
Yeah, that it wasn't just cities which are far apart from each other and don't know
Yeah.
anything. They knew about each other.
They knew, of course, they knew. You look at Harappan sites; they're spread all across Gulf also,
Yeah.
Makran, because they are taking the ship all the way to Egypt and
Yeah.
Mesopotamia.
Also, with Mohsen Raza Khan, we did an episode about the history of religion where he spoke about how even Islam is influenced from religions that existed before Islam. Like when we speak about Sufism, it was inspired by practices that were there before Sufism actually became a thing. Any world religion or philosophy is inspired from something that came before it.
Yeah.
So for all you know, even the Zoroastrianism and Vedic thing came from some other source belief from way before, for which maybe we've even lost archaeological evidence.
Yeah, we might not have found archaeological evidence, but if we not find direct archaeological evidence, we will find indirect evidence, right? So one needs to keep looking at it and not push narrative.
Okay.
That's what I would say, because the other side of it, the one side is the people who are pushing this narrative of migration, because they say, the people who push the narrative of migration, they say there's not just one migration, there are waves of migration that happen. But on the other side is, they say that from here to there migrated, and we are the ones who are responsible for their culture. Now both sides are extreme. We need to understand, in history and archaeology, there are shades of grey. Nothing is ever black and white.
Yeah. You need to take your emotions out of a subject if you actually want to understand
of
the
course,
subject.
100%. Otherwise, you can't
Yeah.
do justice.
One thing I'll tell you about the Indian audience that we figured from the podcast is that they're getting smart very fast.
Hmm.
Okay. But I feel if Indian audiences want to expand even more, they need to take emotions, religion, spirituality out of the conversation when trying to understand these subjects.
Yeah.
And be open to the exact polar opposite view. At least hear it out and then come to a grey conclusion.
Yeah.
I think the internet is going there, but slowly. Like even some of the things you've said on the show are going to get like backlashes
No,
just
of
out
course,
of
of
emotion.
course. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just how the internet
Yeah,
works. But
yeah.
maybe in the 2030s, we'll be in a more evolved state of mind to be able to accept truths that even trouble us.
Yeah, I know I'm going to get emails. Or I'm going to get DMs because I do that. Like, that happens with me, of course. But see, if I find fact, I will be happy to change my stance. That's what I've learned from, my senior archaeologists also. That if some evidence come to light at a later stage, accept it and then start working on the change.
Yeah.
Also, I don't want to ever push a narrative. And here also, I'm not pushing any narrative. It's just what I'm saying is we have not found many conclusive answers that people are dying to hear.
The reason I'm not asking you to continue that timeline is because everything you said till this point kind of makes you understand what happened after that 1000 BC mark.
Yeah,
And
after
a lot
that,
of
though, we
us-
all know because a lot of it is written.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you have the rise of Buddhism with Gautam Buddha coming in the picture, and then you have Magadha Empire, the republics, coming up, and after that, everything is quite sort of documented, and
Yeah.
we find evidence for it.
Yeah.
But pre that is where finding evidence becomes very important.
Well, this was a great episode, Disha Ahluwalia. The one thing I've learned through the podcast, a monk told me this. He said that God is also a creature that's still evolving.
Yeah,
And the one thing I've understood is that archaeologists are also professionals who are constantly like learning and
Yeah.
absorbing new things.
yeah,
I think gone are the days where an archaeologist can say, no, this is what the truth is.
yeah.
I think everyone has just understood that even history is grey and we're still trying to find more.
Yeah,
But you guys need to always speak from a perspective of evidence.
yeah,
Which is why these are the most important history podcasts.
yeah.
While the other ones might be more masaledar, these are the real ones.
Yeah, it's true. We need to, keep evolving our own perspective also, and it's important to do that. Otherwise, you become sort of, maza nahi aata. You don't feel like working then. There's nothing to work towards then if you have already established a theory.
Yeah.
So,
Which is why unemotionalize yourself.
yeah, it's very important.
All
I
right.
second that.
Thank you, Disha Ahluwalia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Looking forward to speaking to you again and learning
Yes.
from you. History Devi Mata. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was the episode for today. I love history as much as you do, and that's why I look forward to my conversations with archaeologists, with historians. I want you guys to send us guest recommendations in this domain. Which other historians, archaeologists would you like to see on the show? Tell me what you thought of this episode as well. We build the podcast further based on your feedback. So tell us in the comment section what you thought of this, how I can improve my own skill as a podcaster. I'm always open to your feedback. This was a super fun and enlightening conversation for me. And for more conversations like this, make sure you follow us on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. History is going to be back. Archaeology is going to be back. TRS is going to be back very soon. Send us all that feedback. And thank you so much for listening in.